Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to IOSH London Metropolitan Branch webinar. I'm going to be in conversation with Lisa Ramos and Dave Garton about a workplace accident that's affected her and her family. My name's Nick Patience. I'm the Programme Manager for the London Metropolitan Branch. The webinar is going to last around 50 minutes, and hopefully we'll have around 10 minutes at the end to be able to answer any questions you may have. Lisa was involved in a forklift truck accident about 14 years ago, and as a result of this is now an above-knee amputee. She's going to speak alongside her husband Dave Garton to raise awareness of the repercussions the accident's had on her and her family. And I'd now like to introduce Lisa Ramos.
Hi everybody. First off, I will be showing some slides throughout obviously this chat that we're having. There will be some graphic pictures, but what I'll do is I'll give you a warning before I put them on, and then we won't leave them on for too long. I'm just going to...
So, hi Lisa, can you tell us more about yourself, please?
Obviously, I'm Lisa Ramos. My husband Dave will be joining us on this chat. I've been with Dave since 1992. We have one son, Kieran. My actual background was in training, so I was actually an MVQ assessor. But what had happened was I'd had a change of career. We weren't financially stable, so what had happened was Dave was working as a forklift driver for a particular logistics company when he heard that there was a vacancy going. So it wasn't a job that, you know, I was thrilled about, but I was over the moon when I was given the position, because it meant that we could get ourselves out of the position that we'd got ourselves in financially. I'm just going to put this on now because I can hopefully put the correct slides on.
Okay, thanks Lisa.
There we go.
Tell us about the day that the accident happened, please.
Right, so that particular week, Dave was actually on the opposite shift to me. We've got a picture here. It was actually our son Kieran's 13th birthday, the day it happened. Because I was on the day shift, I'm a mum who likes to watch her child opening his present. So this photo was actually taken about 6:30 in the morning. So I'd watched Kieran opening his presents. I went off to work. It was exactly the same as any other shift that I'd done. I was finishing at 4 o'clock that day. Dave was going to collect me because we'd arranged for Kieran to have a small party. But around 3:30 p.m, I was walking from the group leader's office, which was kind of like a porter cabin within the warehouse. I was walking from there in front of the container bays to get to a department that was within the warehouse. Unbeknown to me, there was a forklift driver in one of the container bays. Now, I hadn't realised he was in there because we'd finished for the day. There was no need for him to be in there. And obviously he hadn't realised that I just walked past the container that he was in. I assumed that his engine was off because I would have seen the lights shining at the end of the container. Obviously I walked past, he's come and reversed straight over my left leg, and it was only when I was shouting and screaming at him to get off me that he realised that he'd actually ran a person over. A comment that I later heard was that he actually thought he'd run over a roll of tape, you know, the ones that you mark the flooring out with, you know. So obviously I'm screaming, everyone comes rushing over, but he had to drive forward to release my leg. So technically it was being run over twice, and that caused a heck of a lot of damage to my nerves, etc. My colleagues were absolutely amazing, because they told me, when I was saying what's wrong, they told me that I'd actually dislocated my knee. And I don't know if anyone's ever worked in a warehouse kind of environment, you know, everyone's looking for an excuse, you know, to give you some banter. And so although I was in excruciating pain and literally wanted to cry my eyes out, in my mind, it was a dislocated knee. And I didn't want to give them any ammunition to take the mickey out of me when I came back on Monday. So for them to be able to do that, they wouldn't let me sit up. My glasses had been thrown with the impact. They wouldn't let me have those. They said those are broken. So in my eyes, I dislocated my knee. Then obviously the paramedics arrived. They administered you with gas and air or whatever. But in my eyes, I dislocated my knee. I didn't realise that it was as serious as it was.
So apart from the gas and air, did they give you anything else at the site?
I think they gave me, I think once we was in the ambulance, I think they gave me morphine.
Okay.
But
okay.
the gas and air was sufficient.
And at that time, you really didn't know how serious those injuries were, because
no, I thought I was being a wet blanket. Okay. That's what I thought. I thought I've dislocated my knee. It's not as, you know, if I make a big fuss about it, they're going to take the mickey out of me when I come back. So in my opinion, they did a tremendous job, because I think that got me on the right step. And then once you are then given stronger drugs, then they can break the news to you.
So I'd just like to bring Dave in here. How did you hear that Lisa had been injured?
Well, I was actually driving to pick Lisa up from work when my mobile rang. As it was a group leader, I pulled into a lay-by and he told me that Lisa had been involved in an accident. I told him that I was close by and that I'd be there shortly. So obviously, like I say, I pulled onto the car park and everybody was walking out, and I noticed that none of them could look at me. Then I met the group leader at the door, and I could tell by the look on his face it was obviously more serious than I'd have thought. He took me through the warehouse and we went to the container bays, and I could see Lisa lying on the floor covered by coats. So yeah, that was how I found out.
Okay, thanks for that, Dave. So you got to hospital. Dave knew what was going on there. So Lisa, what was going through your mind once the doctors had told you that they'd amputated your foot?
Well, first off, what they'd actually said to me when I got there, you go through all the paperwork, you've got to sign consent forms, and what they'd said was that they may have to amputate the foot. At no point did I think that would be a reality, you know, so I took it with a pinch of salt. When I actually came round from the anaesthetic, I'm just going to move this slightly. When I came round from the anaesthetic, Dave was actually given the option of telling me that it had actually been amputated. But when I came round, all I can remember is Dave sat there crying. Our friend Roger had turned up at that point, and then the surgeon telling me what they'd actually done, you know, and I was literally numb with shock, and all I can remember is having tears streaming down my face, because I just didn't know what that meant.
Okay, so Dave, it was your unenviable task then to break the news to other people, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'd already spoken to Lisa's stepdad, Tony, to ask him to inform Lisa's mum to pick Kieran up. But then obviously you've got the worst news now is the fact that obviously her foot's been amputated. So now I've got to ring her mum up, So although she knew that Lisa had been involved in an accident, she didn't realise how serious it was. So I told her the news. Obviously, she goes into mother mode, and I've got to get to the hospital and do all this. And obviously, you know, at that point, they're trying to settle Lisa, get her as comfortable as they can. So, you know, it's not a good idea for a mum to come down anyway. Lisa's dad at the time was living in Spain. So I then had to ring him up, and he actually had to calm me down. And when he'd done that, I told him how serious it was and the news. Obviously then I have to ring up my dad, everybody in the family, you know, and the phone calls just seemed to go on forever.
So that was quite emotionally draining for you, having to do that. Yeah.
That was the worst thing that I've ever had to do.
Yeah. So Lisa, we're just going to talk about Kieran for a bit. So Kieran thought you'd broken your leg, but how did he react once he realised it was that much more serious?
Well, me and David made the decision that we would wait until he came in to see me, because obviously being told by somebody else, he could see for himself then that I was, you know, despite this happening, I was okay. So when Dave brought him in the following morning, obviously approached my bed, but I'd got a tent over my left leg. And I can just remember telling him, and I'll always remember that because that was the first time I'd ever said the words that my foot's been amputated, and Kieran was just sobbing his heart out, bless him. And that upset me more than anything, you know, because there was nothing I could say or do at that moment to make him feel any better, because I didn't understand what was going to be ahead of me anyway.
So I know that you've had a number of surgeries, but what happened after the first surgery?
We're back.
Oh, we're back.
Yeah,
we're back.
What actually happened on the Tuesday was, when I came back from, at that point, I wasn't actually upset that they were going to amputate the leg, you know, because I thought, well, they've took the foot. And when I came round from that surgery, they explained that the skin and fat wasn't viable, that they would have to do numerous skin grafts. But that's actually the first time I experienced phantom limb pain, which is quite confusing, because obviously, why did it not occur on the Friday when I came round from surgery? You know, and that's something that I've experienced ever since that day.
Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned earlier about having to say those words about being disabled or being an amputee.
Yeah.
How hard was it initially learning to accept that you were now disabled?
It's confusing, because as soon as you go into hospital, they haven't got time to namby-pamby, and they will use the correct terms. And the word stump and amputee, I hated so much. I really hated those words, because I wasn't ready to accept that. You know, even your family and friends visiting you, it was as though I was dead. I would literally have people in my room crying and sobbing, saying her life is over now. But what the amputee centre did, which was absolutely brilliant and still makes me laugh now, is when the amputee nurse came to see me, she said, right, we need to start you coming to rehab. And I said, well, I don't want to go there with all them amputees there. I don't want to go there with all the dangly limbs hanging out. And so she says, well, we'll book you in when there's nobody else having an appointment. And so when I actually got there, the waiting area was full. But actually, these people knew exactly what I was experiencing. And it was amazing. Once I'd got my head around it, it was amazing.
So during that stay in hospital, Dave, were you able to spend as much time as you would like to have done?
Yeah, we were lucky. Obviously, I had to inform Kieran's school about what had happened, and they gave him a month off. And then we just visited Lisa every day, obviously early in the morning till late at night. But what people don't realise is how tiring it is when you're doing it. And Kieran very often would fall asleep in the room on a blow-up bed that we'd taken in. So yeah, there's a picture of Kieran fast asleep in the hospital room, you know, that Lisa was in.
Okay. Did you so you've had to put a blow-up bed at home there. Did you have to make any other alterations to your home before Lisa could be discharged?
Yeah, well, basically what we were lucky in the fact that we had the room downstairs, a separate dining room downstairs. So what I did was I took the bed and took it downstairs before the physiotherapist came out. Obviously, when they saw it, they were happy for her to come out, but they all obviously have to organise different equipment. It's like we had to have ramps for the front room, obviously a wheelchair, the Lisa, and a commode. The worst thing for me was actually getting that equipment delivered to the house, because obviously, you know, you never expect anything like that to happen.
No, it must be really difficult. So, Lisa, how did you feel about going home? Because you'd spent some time in hospital, now you've got to change to get home.
Yeah, I was really, really happy. I was, you know, over the moon, because as much as I was really cared for while I was in there, you want your own things around you. I wanted Dave with me all the time. I didn't realise how much pressure I was putting on Dave, but what I was told was that before I could go home, I needed to see my injuries, because once I was out, I'd get a regular visit from a district nurse who would have to redress it. So I'm actually going to put some graphic images up now. Hopefully I won't mess this up. I'm actually going to put on 3 graphic images, followed by a blank. Here we go. You know, that is what they call degloving, because that's where literally skin and fat were just ripped off. There we go.
Okay, so very serious injury. And so how were things when you actually got home?
Well, I can remember the nurses saying to me that it will hit you once you get home. And literally, you know, you're so pleased to get home, but then you start noticing that this property is not suitable for you anymore. You know, so having your bed downstairs, having to use a commode, you know, people visiting you, you get into a routine of just being in your pajamas. The bed was then moved into the front room, so you're eating, sleeping, watching telly, all within the same space. You know, it was difficult. It was really difficult, because what had happened was, with our stairs as well, normally you can borrow a stair lift, but because our stairs were a funny shape, I wasn't even able to do that.
So it meant that being at home was actually quite difficult for you.
Yeah.
So how was it for you at home then, in that sort of sense? It was
obviously I was happy to be home. I really was happy to be home, because I wanted Dave to be with me, but at the same time, that's when you realise you are now disabled. When you're in a hospital, they do things for you.
Yeah.
You know, when you're then trying to do things for yourself, it's very, 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 very difficult, and it's as though you need babysitting. That's how it felt at times. You know, people offering to look after you while Dave went to the supermarket and things like that. And so it's not just the things around you, it's the way people, you know, people start acting around you, and they don't realise that that they're doing that.
So were you really able to open up to family and friends regarding what you were going through?
No. Unfortunately, and I still suffer, you know, I still do this same pattern now, is that I destroyed my family work. And so the whole time I would have to put a brave face on And so that was very, very difficult, because these people are coming to see you, not to cheer you up. You know, if you think about visitors, you know, you're there to cheer them up because they genuinely believe that your life is over, you know, and sometimes you don't feel like cheering people up, you know, sometimes you do need cheering up yourself. So it is something that I was lucky though, because I'd go on amputee forums and things like that. And it's so much better now as well, because you've got Facebook pages dedicated to this kind of thing. So I get that support from strangers, really.
Okay.
You know.
But they're strangers who've got a commonality with you.
Yeah.
They've got something in common with you.
Yeah. And they understand little things like the first time falling out your wheelchair. It's not about getting hurt. It's the humiliation of it, that you can't get back up. And silly things like, you know, that maybe Dave or my mum couldn't understand as to why I would get so upset by things like that.
So just moving on a little bit to the rehabilitation side of it. I mean, we saw the slides earlier, and if people don't know, when a stump is in that condition, it's not easy, or it's not possible to fit a limb to. But you did eventually get to the stage where you could get an artificial limb, so you started to learn to walk at that stage. How did you feel when you were healed enough to learn to walk?
I'm just going to put you a couple of slides on, because literally the feeling, I can't even describe it. You know, the feeling was unbelievable. It's all right. I'm having technical issues again. I'm not very good at this malarkey.
Oh, it's all right.
Here we go. That should do it. Right. Here we go. Right, yeah. So learning to walk, I had to wait 6 months because I had to be fully healed, and they didn't want to risk the skin because it's so delicate. I mean, you can see on there the difference in depth on the stump. You know, it looks more like burns. So by the time the 6 months were up and I was healed enough, you know, but how I feel about walking, how I feel about standing up is literally nothing compared to how I feel about dancing. That feeling, honestly, I can't even describe it. In fact, I told you yesterday about what they'll do is they'll send you home with your leg and say, but you can't stand up in it.
Yeah.
You can only put it on your stump because your stump and your nerves are so sensitive. And I can remember having the dance channel on the TV. Here's another photo here. And Dave catching me dancing, and he went absolutely ballistic, you know. But to me, that feeling, I can remember the song, that feeling is still exactly the same to this day. You know, I'm lucky in the fact that I get to choose whether to wear my limb, wear crutches, or be in the wheelchair, you know. And so that doesn't impact me like it did all those years back.
One of the things you were telling me yesterday was, yes, you've got that choice, but people react to you differently as to whether you're... Tell us about people's reactions to you.
Well, if, so for example, we go out and do the speeches, and the majority of the time I do wear the legs, that's what I prefer. I'll get in the car, I'll take the prosthetic limb off, because I'm above knee, it's very hard plastic and it digs into you, so it's not very comfortable. I'll take the limb off, we will drive to a services, and then I will go to the counter and they will answer.
So you're in the wheelchair now?
Yeah, I'm in the wheelchair, and they will answer. I will ask the question, they will answer Dave. And I think it's that being uncomfortable. You know, I used to find that irritating, but now, you know, there's worse things to be worrying about in the world. I just think, well, you know, there's things that I feel uncomfortable about, so I just put it down. I just put it down to that. There's no point, you know, getting upset over it.
No. You're still sharing the screen. I don't know if you want to continue to share the screen at this point.
I'm hoping that I won't.
Okay, no, that's brilliant.
Back a day, I won't do it wrong.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Did you receive any counselling?
Yeah, I was very, very lucky, because very early on I received counselling, then what happened was, what the processes that I was going through, my chant would be, I don't like change. I didn't like changing doctors. I didn't like any of that. So when I had to swap from my counsellor to my cognitive behavioural therapist, because by that point I'd been diagnosed with PTSD, I wasn't happy about it.
So post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah, post-traumatic stress disorder. I wasn't happy about, but obviously he specialised in that.
Yeah.
And it's the best thing. Anybody now, I'm totally saying to them on the forums, you need to get counselling. You know, I never thought that I could be around forklifts. You know, now I'm an ambassador for the Forklift Truck Association. I really never thought that I would ever get to that point. And it allowed me to accept that this is what your life is like now and move on. And when I moved on, that's when all the people who've also been impacted, they then move on.
Yeah.
You know, so to me, having the counselling was the best thing that I could have done.
It's been a long process. But Dave, tell us about how you've been affected by this.
Well, I was quite lucky in the fact that I took Lisa to the doctors for one of her appointments, and obviously I mentioned how I was feeling down and how I was always tired and everything else. And luckily, he signed me off with depression.
Okay.
Now, I'm not the sort of person that will open up and talk to people, but, you know, at the end of the day, work organised for me to see a counsellor.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, I didn't have the CBT, but I did have the counselling, which helped, because it does get you out of the house and you are able to talk about things, you know, oh, Lisa's done this, Lisa's done that, which obviously I can't talk to Lisa about, because obviously she was the one that was injured. So it did give me that, but I think that the one thing that's helped me has been doing the speeches.
Okay.
Because to me, it is like CBT the CBT. You know, obviously I'm, you know, having to relive things that perhaps I didn't want to.
Yeah.
Instead of hiding them inside, you know, and, you know, at the end of the day, me and Lisa are that weird couple that do actually enjoy spending time with each other 99% of the time.
Yeah.
Just not during lockdown.
Yeah.
Okay. I think everybody's learned something about their partners during lockdown. So from the conversations that we've had previously, I mean, I know that it's years on, but Lisa's still on medication. Have you got concerns about Lisa's medication? So Lisa or Dave, come back with that.
Yeah, there are quite a few, obviously. I mean, since her accident, Lisa's taken probably close to 70,000 painkillers.
And we're not talking paracetamol here, are we?
I mean, this is gabapentin, amitriptyline,
Tramadol.
You know, tramadol. You know, it's
powerful painkillers.
Powerful painkillers, and obviously you can't be here 100% of the time watching what she's doing. And obviously, you know, I remember one point where Lisa hadn't slept for 3 days and she was popping tramadol like they was going out of fashion. She basically had ground a wisdom tooth down so much that it actually fell out.
Oh.
I don't think people quite understand what phantom pain is. So basically, every day for the last 14 years, my brain thinks that my foot is still under that forklift. So it is that exact pain. And they can try and help you with the painkillers, but the pain is still there. You know, it's crazy. The last operation I've had, so I've had about, I can't remember how many operations I've had now, but my last one was at the end of February this year.
Yeah.
And that was to get the nerve, cut the nerve out, and then try and reroute it into a muscle in the hope that the brain will think that it's got a purpose. Up to now, I've not seen any positive results, you know, but that doesn't mean there won't be. I think they say about 6 months, you know, when you can see that, but the pain is unreal, and it's it's not a psychological pain, it's a physical pain, you know, and people don't really understand that.
So it must be really difficult just to keep going with that pain.
Yeah.
Now, you were talking earlier about Kieran.
Yeah.
So it was Kieran's birthday, and you mentioned a little bit about Kieran. And I think one of the things you'd like to talk about is what the impact your accidents had on Kieran.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I feel incredibly guilty about. I was a very hands-on mum. I was very, very strict with his discipline. And when I had my accident, I just kind of wasn't interested in doing that. So literally Dave was trying to look after me, look after Kieran. Kieran was doing what the hell he wanted with who he wanted, you know, and that's led to very, very poor decisions that he's made. But also, you know, when I would have my rants when things weren't going that great, I'd be screaming things like, I wish he'd have killed me. Not realising that my son...
You're referring to the forklift truck driver.
Yeah. Not realising my son could hear that, you know, and you think, then once I'd had all my counselling, I'm back to being me now, Kieran, so now I'm going to start disciplining you. By now he's 16, and it's very difficult, and for us, it's so sad, because we can pinpoint where things started going wrong for him,
Okay.
you know, and so for us, I don't really care about the injuries. If I could have my son living a happy, healthy life, then that would make me so happy and content.
Okay. So obviously it's a Health and Safety Professionals Forum.
Yeah.
One of the questions that's come up from the audience is, were your company prosecuted?
Yeah. They were prosecuted for obviously breaches in health and safety. Because it was 14 years ago, they were found guilty, and they were given the maximum fine at the time, which was £20,000. You know, so in my mind, that did make me feel better, and it did give me some closure with regards to that, because obviously when you're being investigated, it's not just the HSE, it's their solicitors, you know, the company solicitors, it's private investigators, you know, and you're trying to rehabilitate while you've got all these investigations going on where different people are trying to put the blame on you or
Yeah.
whatever, and it's so difficult.
I think it was an interesting thing that you mentioned about the HSE investigation. Yeah, what instigated the HSE investigation? What made that start?
I did, because what happened was, when I came out of hospital 4 weeks later, I rang the HSE and said, when are you going to be interviewing me? And they said, we only investigate serious accidents. And so obviously I was like, well, my leg's been amputated. And they said, well, that's not what we were told. We were told you fractured your leg. And so, bearing in mind, when the paramedics arrived, they did say I had possibly fractured my leg. And what I like to think is that it was an oversight.
I see.
You know, on my company's behalf, because otherwise, if I think about what I really think, I don't want to go to that bad place where I think that they were trying to stitch me up or this, that, and the other. I class it as an oversight because that makes it easier.
That's easier for you to live with.
Yeah, you know, that it was an oversight, and that's the end of it. You know, obviously I did attend when it went to court.
Yeah.
And that actually was the starting point for me working along the Forklift Truck Association, because when I came out and I went by myself, I didn't want no family or friends there. I wanted to go by myself and face whatever it was they were going to say. And when I came out, Central News were there. And so they did a short interview, and then that's how all of this began really, you know, just by trying to tell people what damage a forklift can do.
Yeah. There's a couple more questions. If we can, I can just pick some of these up. I think, so I know that something happened during the initial scene, and that's relevant to this question, is, has this experience changed your view of the role of health and safety professionals? Tell us what that health and safety officer was doing.
Well, before the paramedics even arrived, I couldn't even tell you what this person's name was, the health and safety person. I couldn't tell you what they looked like. But before the paramedics arrived, while I'm lying on the floor, on the walkway, he took photographs of me. Now, we've had it previously where we've done speeches and people in the audience, not health and safety professionals, but workers in the audience have complained and said, well, they do that here, they take photographs of us here. That's not what I've got an issue with, because in my mind, that actually can help clear matters up. You know, the same with CCTV. I'm a big advocate for CCTV. My issue was, you took a photo, why was that not part of the investigation then? Where did those photos go? You know, for all I know, it could be like these videos that you see online of people being injured. You know, I would hate for anybody to see those photos, especially my family or my friends, because that wouldn't be very nice. So, in my opinion, also as well, I've got a lot more respect for people in health and safety. But I do still think that there is a way to go, because I'll be honest, you know, when we're on LinkedIn and people share videos of horrible accidents, some of the comments are quite disgusting, you know, like idiot, stupid, and things like that. And it does make me think, well, if that's your attitude, how are you coming across to the people at work who you want to listen to you? If you're coming across like you're up here and they're idiots down here, that's not great. To me, a health and safety professional, it's a calling and it's a hard job, because you're making my life harder by implementing this. And it's very, very difficult.
But you're getting that from both sides as well, because obviously you're getting it from the management, you know, oh, we need to cut down on this, we need to cut down on this, but then you're getting it from the workers. You know, why are they telling us to do this?
It's a very, very difficult position to be in. But I had a conversation with you the other day where we was on about impact, and we were talking about I've always focused on negative impact, you know, how upset my family are. But when I was an MVQ assessor, there was some students that I'm still in contact now with, and this is 24 years ago, and one of them became a health and safety professional. She's actually doing a speech that I'm going to be part of on Thursday, and because of my accident, and I was so shocked. It's like, wow, that to me is amazing, that because of what happened to me, she went into a different direction and wanted to help people, you know. So that was fabulous for me to hear that. I was really, really pleased.
Okay, thank you for that. I know there's something else that we've talked about in the past, and someone else is asking about, is your relationship, or the driver's reaction, and perhaps any relationship or any conversation that you've had with the driver of the forklift truck.
No, I think what the problem is that when you have an accident, straight away the union and the management would have said to the driver, don't go near. And then the problem is that when the investigation is over with work, with the company, so much time has gone by. How can you then go to that person who you've ran over and say, I'm so sorry, because it's 6 months later? And I think that is a massive problem. For me, that is the one thing that I would get so angry about, because it's like not one person said sorry to me. No one from management, the driver, and I needed that. But with the CBT, every week would be the same. He would say, well, what difference would it make to you? You will still be in the same position. And after 3 years of listening to that, you get to the point where it's like, well, actually, it won't make a difference to me, but I still wanted him to come forward because I knew it would make a difference to him. You know, if he said to me, I'm sorry, I would say it was an accident. You know, we know how Kieran's been impacted. How has he been impacted? The driver, how has his children been impacted? You know, I think psychological issues are downplayed and they are far worse than a physical injury, in my opinion.
We always try now. One of the questions that we get asked now is, what would you do differently as a company, for the company, if you get what I mean?
Yeah.
And one of our answers is, if you have an accident, get the people back together as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. Remember that the person that was actually injured is a human being, and treat them as such. Don't go sending people that they've never seen, never heard of.
That was a problem.
Which is obviously what happened with us. You know, I'd worked there for 7 years. I'd never seen these people that were coming round to the house.
Imagine you're in your bed, in your pajamas, and work turns up. You don't know any of these people.
Yeah.
And they're sat on the sofa asking you questions, writing everything down, you know, and I tried up to a point to maintain a really good relationship with them. But when they started saying things that I knew that weren't true, that ended. And that
so the relationship with your company
and that hurt me psychologically, because it's like, are you actually for real when I've had this accident and you're then going to treat me like I'm guilty of something when I haven't done anything wrong? I was on a walkway.
Can we talk a little bit? People have been asking about the safe systems of work, about the walkway, about the culture of safety in that warehouse. Tell us a bit more about the safety culture and the safe system of work.
I'll be honest, I think that the safety culture all them years ago, there wasn't that much done. We'd got the walkways at the end of the day, but this is something that me and Dave would have very, very stern words about, because when he says that we're on different levels with regards to how we think, I'm at a place where I take responsibility for my part in this happening, because where those container bays were, there was a walkway directly in front of it, and several times a day, as I came to that container while I'm on that walkway, I'd poke my head round and see if there was a forklift in there. That to me is something that I should have reported probably a minimum of 5 times a day. That walkway should not have been there. So I should have reported it, Dave should have reported it, every single person who ever was within that area should have reported it. And so I do accept some blame, you know, whereas in the early days, because they got prosecuted, it was quite easy to blame the company and say, well, you know, as much as I'm not against the driver, he reversed out of that container without looking behind him, you know, and so it is much easier to blame other people, whereas Dave was still fixated on the fact that the driver did this and the company did that. And I find that, I think, and we had conversations, I think that Dave was stuck on that opinion, because the opinion that with him being a team leader, that he never once reported that walkway would be too much for him to handle. You know, him playing a part in this happening. You know, there's no negativity. It was an accident and you've got to move on. However, changes needed to be made, and I believe that the changes that were made were for HSE.
Okay,
For appearances.
Yeah, it wasn't actually, you know what it's like. The boss has come round, work to all today because we've got these visitors. You know, you're trying to sort out a pay rise. The union are like, work to rule because we're trying to sort this pay rise out. In our brains, we should be saying work to rule. Oh, you mean work safely? Because the rest of the time, we don't even realise that we are cutting corners that could put ourselves in danger, you know, and we do that so easily, you know, and it's crazy.
So health and safety should just be part of the job. It just should be just
automatically
part of the job. And it's everyone's responsibility.
Yes, it is. Yes, and that's why I think that my opinion changed, because it is everybody's responsibility. You know, you can't just go, well, and this is what I genuinely believe. Well, I thought it was safe because we've got a health and safety officer. Well, you've got your own eyes. The first day that I worked there, I'd gone from a nice comfy office, classroom based, to working somewhere that I was frightened, right? And then very quickly, I became the same as them. You know, we'd laugh about the culture, you know, and when you look back and you think about your own actions, very quickly, I was like a sheep following what other people did. I thought that I was maintaining health and safety because I did use the walkways, and I used the walkways every time, even when we was going on break, whereas everybody else would be like running over, you know, so they didn't miss a couple of minutes of the break. However, when I analysed my behaviour and what I was doing, I acknowledge now that, no, I was cutting corners without realising it.
I think it's interesting what you were just saying then, in terms of when you first started, having come from an office-based environment, came into this warehouse and then realised that this was actually quite a dangerous environment. But then after a while, because of what other people were doing, you just got used to it, that level of danger. And because nothing happened, you just carried on.
My office in the warehouse, I'd class it as an office. No, it wasn't an office. A partition that you might have at a seminar. So I'd got one at the front of me and one at the side of me here, but I would have forklifts on all 4 sections of my area. And that was normal practice. It wasn't just my department, it was other departments that had that. If you Google my accident, you would think that I was in a nice cozy office upstairs and that I've come into the warehouse and I've been skipping around, twirling a bit, because obviously I don't think these vehicles are dangerous. No, I worked in that warehouse. I walked on that walkway every single day, and I stopped seeing the danger after a very short space of time.
And the walkway and that precaution just didn't protect you anyway. Okay. I'm just having a quick look through to see if there are any other questions, but thanks for what you've said so far. I think it's been really useful, really powerful. There's some positive messages that are coming through from people saying that thank you for sharing the story.
If people have got any, you know, later on they might think of a question, we're more than happy to, they can send us an inbox on LinkedIn or, you know, so if there was any additional questions, more than happy, you know, to answer those.
So someone's actually commented saying that they empathise with what you were saying about PTSD, and that seeking professional help is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength.
Yes, 100%. I've had
we do say that now as well.
The thing is, it's the hardest thing I can remember, because what my homework was, I had to write down everything that I could remember about what had happened. Also taste, smell, hearing, all of that kind of business. And when I got up in the morning, I was forced to read it over and over again for 60 minutes. And I would be sobbing. And then over a period of time, it gets easier. And I think sometimes when we're doing our speeches, I can come across as a bit cold, but it's because that counselling was so effective in my mind, it's as though I'm talking about somebody else, or I'm talking about a fictional character, you know, and so that's my way really of protecting myself, because, you know, I don't need to be thinking, oh no, what would have my life been like? Because to be honest, the life that I've got now, even with the pain that I'm in, I'm happy, I'm content, I've got beautiful grandchildren, I've got hobbies that I do. So it might not be the life I was expecting,
yeah,
but it's certainly, if you ask my mum, she'd just say the opposite. You know, if you ask my mum, she literally thinks that I'm in a coma, I'm capable of doing nothing. However, my dad, why aren't you doing this? He thinks I should be climbing mountains like I'm from the SAS, you know. So my life might not have been how I would have planned it, but I'm extremely happy. I'm very, very lucky to have had the support of Dave, you know, because that's the person who you're shouting at. That's the person who you're screaming at. That's the person who I believe 100% was going to leave me. And so I was doing things that weren't that nice, where I would then say, well, I told you, Mum, that you were going to leave me. Now, it wouldn't have been, if he had left me, it wouldn't have been because I was injured and I was now in a wheelchair. It would have been because he just couldn't take the aggression anymore. And then obviously that's where Kieran, he struggles with his emotions. So if he's upset, it comes out as anger and rage. And so that, you know, when you're a child and you witness that and you think that that's normal behaviour, that's what you replicate.
Now, as a young man in his 20s, he's still having those troubles.
Yeah, and we have sent him to counselling. We've sent him to counselling, but the problem is when you want it more for him than he does, I've been now told that that's the wrong thing to do. He's got to want to do it himself, and that's difficult, you know, because one, we have to live with him, you know, so it's like...
even I find it difficult to admit that I needed counselling.
Yeah, it is difficult, but also the pain that I get is all because it's nerve damage. Any mood that I'm in, whether it be anger, upset, or whatever, actually aggravates the pain. And so it's very difficult when you're living with somebody who has these issues, because it's as though there's a big cloud hanging over you, you know, but you can't wrap yourself in cotton wool and not be around people because they want to have a moan and groan about something, you know. So it is what it is at the end of the day.
Okay, so Lisa and Dave, thanks very much. I'm just looking through to see if there's any other questions that we can answer right now. I'd just like to thank Dave and Lisa again very much for sharing with us their experience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. But there's some important lessons to be learnt from this story. Thanks so much. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye now.